All right, so this video is primarily intended to prepare you for the civil rights module and especially prepare you to engage with the Ta-Nehisi Coates reading titled The Case for Reparations. I know we have a picture here of Martin Luther King on the PowerPoint slide, but we're actually not going to talk about Martin Luther King at all. So why do I assign Ta-Nehisi Coates The Case for Reparations? This is actually one of my favorite pieces that I have you guys read in this class, and it's usually one of my students' favorites as well. The reason is this. Everybody in this class already knows that there are disparities between ethnic groups in this country in living standards and socioeconomic status. As you can see from this chart, this tracks the US poverty rate by ethnicity from the 1950s until 2010. We don't have any data past 2010 because the census is going on right now as we speak. So we will get an update within the next year or two on this. However, you'll see that African Americans since the 1950s have lived underneath the poverty rate, the poverty line, more than any other group. In 2010, about 27% of African Americans lived beneath the poverty line, while Hispanics were pretty close to that number as well. And then alternatively, non-Hispanic whites, in other words, Caucasians, Asian Americans, tend to fare pretty well. In addition to that, you guys probably also know that we have an incarceration rate issue in this country, and there are significant disparities between African American men and white men. This statistic right here is incredibly alarming. 1 out of 15 African American men ages 18 or over are currently incarcerated. If you are an African American male 20 to 34 years of age, there's a 1 in 9 chance that you are incarcerated. If you are Caucasian, there's a 1 in 100 chance that you are incarcerated. Now, that's still a really alarming number when you compare the United States incarceration rates to other countries in the world, but it is especially bad for African Americans. In addition to that, African Americans can expect to live fewer years than their Caucasian or white counterparts. If you look here, life expectancy rates have gotten better. In other words, the difference between life expectancy rates between both groups has narrowed over the years, but even still in 2010, white people can expect to live approximately 4 years longer than their African American counterparts. So most of us are familiar with these numbers or these statistics. Or in addition to that, a lot of us are not surprised to hear this. However, there are a lot of people in this country that would argue that African Americans are not doing as well. Hispanics are not doing as well as other groups because maybe they don't work hard enough or they don't work smart enough. This is why I have assigned to you the Ta-Nehisi Coates article. That's because Ta-Nehisi Coates is really focused on what the causal mechanisms are behind all of this. So his paper or his article that was published in The Atlantic in the year of 2013 is really this historical narrative, right? But the beauty of it is that oftentimes in your K through 12 education, there is a focus on slavery, right? What it meant to be a slave, the Underground Railroad system, the difference between the North and the South, how slavery played into a lot of the discussions and conflict that went on between our founders. And then in addition to that, right, we also get a heavy dose of Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. But there's less attention paid to what happened in between this time period, such as like the Jim Crow era, and we get some exposure to that. And then in addition to that, there's not much discussion in our formative years in the education system, like what happened after the civil rights movement. Okay, so a lot of our history books almost read as though, oh, great, we solved everything with the civil rights movement. We sort of amended what happened to African Americans for hundreds of years in the past, and we can move on, right? But we know that that's not the case, right? So Ta-Nehisi Coates' article is really technical and really detailed. And that's because in many ways, he's trying to build a legal case. He's trying to prove, trying to argue that things were actually stolen from African Americans. And because of that, they deserve reparations. Similar to as if, let's say somebody stole your dog or your car, or they broke into your house and they stole thousands of dollars worth of jewelry or your laptop, your TV, right? If that was the case, if you were able to identify the culprit, and track them down, you would actually arrest them, put them up on trial, and they would be penalized by the criminal system for this. And so Ta-Nehisi Coates is trying to prove to the reader that there is in fact a legal case here, that money and resources were stolen from African Americans, and they actually deserve compensation for that. In addition to that, Ta-Nehisi Coates is also asking for us to reevaluate our history. He's almost requesting a re-education. And this is because he underlines time and time after again in his article that American exceptionalism, that the fact that we are one of the wealthiest nations in the world, we are one of the most modernized, industrialized countries in the world, that is not because we worked really hard and we were really smart. That's because we exploited the free labor of African Americans. Caucasians were able to accumulate wealth because of this exploitive labor, right? And so he argues that we haven't really reconciled with that yet. We don't really acknowledge that in our history books. We don't really acknowledge that in our textbooks. And then lastly, some would argue after reading this article, and I mean, you guys may think differently, he's also asking for something really deep, something spiritual. And it's not really quite evident to the reader whether or not paying out monetary reparations to African Americans would solve this, but there's just something about the indecency, right, of slavery and all of the ways in which we discriminated against African Americans post-civil rights movement. There's something like spiritual here that I can't really articulate in words, but you guys tell me exactly what he's asking for. He's simply asking for, at least I think, an apology. It's like an apology would lead to some sort of spiritual renew that this country really needs. So one last thing that I want to go over with you before you get into reading the Ta-Nehisi Coates article is how mortgages work. Well, why is this important? It's because in building a legal case, Ta-Nehisi Coates first starts with housing discrimination. He thinks that housing discrimination is sort of a gateway to all of the other ways in which African Americans were disenfranchised during, before, during, and after the civil rights movement. So it's important for you to understand how mortgages work in order to wrap your head around this. Let's use an example here, okay? He's going to argue in the article that a lot of African Americans have not been able to accumulate wealth because they had no other choice but to buy into predatory loan agreements in the 1950s moving forward. So what does a predatory loan agreement look like? Well, let's compare that to a regular mortgage. In a regular mortgage, you would purchase a house for whatever it was listed for, whatever you could get it for. Let's say this house in this picture was bought for $100,000 in 2018. And you only had $10,000 to put down for the deposit. That means that you're going to have to borrow $90,000 from a bank, from some sort of lender, and you will work on paying off that $90,000, usually in a 30-year loan. So every single month for the next 30 years, you will work on paying off that $90,000. Let's say your estimated monthly payment was about $1,000 a month. Okay. Let's go back. Here is why buying a house versus renting a house can be advantageous. Suppose that 2 years from now, you get a job somewhere else, you have to move, and your house has appreciated a lot in value. Now you're able to sell your house for $150,000. What does that mean? Well, that means that you are going to, I'm simplifying this, but you are going to get a check from the buyer for $150,000, and you're going to have to pay off your loan company. Okay, so you owe them $90,000 minus $24,000 because you've paid $24,000 into your mortgage for the last 2 years, right? $1,000 a month for 24 months is $24,000. So you owe, oh gosh, I'm terrible at math, $66,000 still on your mortgage. Well, you're going to pay that off, but then the remainder of that $150,000 check is yours. That means that you have profited $74,000, right? So you can walk away, you can take that money elsewhere, and then put another deposit on an even bigger, maybe more expensive house if you'd like to. Okay, so normal mortgages allow you to put equity into the house immediately. In other words, when you are paying that monthly amount, well, you could get that money back as long as your house is still worth something and you want to resell it a couple years down the line. Okay, so that is the beauty of a regular mortgage. You don't actually technically lose money. It's almost like the mortgage company is saving that money for you. Okay, the predatory loan agreement, though, that Clyde Ross signed on to required that you pay off the entire mortgage before you can sell it or take out any equity in the home. In addition to that, if he missed one mortgage payment, he lost the home, was effectively foreclosed upon, and in addition to that, all of his mortgages would never be paid back to him, right? So it's almost like renting. When you rent, if you pay $2,400 to your landlord for 12 months straight, when you leave that apartment, you move somewhere else, you can't ask your landlord for that money back, right? Because you don't actually own the apartment. The landlord owns the apartment. Okay, why else was Clyde Ross's situation not advantageous? Why was it discriminatory? Well, because when you're a homeowner, the one disadvantage to being a homeowner is that when things break, you have to fix them. If you rent an apartment and that window in the front breaks, right? Or the dishwasher stops working, so on and so forth, your landlord has to pay for those fixes. You do not. So Clyde Ross had to fix his house whenever things broke. However, he wasn't able to build equity in the home, right? Because of the fact that he signed on to this loan that required that he pay off the mortgage in full until he could ever sell it or take out equity on it, right? I challenge you to ask anybody that you know who's owned a home for a long time whether or not they've paid off their mortgage in full. What you'll find is that it's very rare. Almost never happens. Okay, so hopefully this will help you better understand the predatory loan agreement aspect of Ta-Nehisi Coates' article. Let me know if you guys need extra help with this article. It is lengthy, but I think you'll really enjoy reading it.